Remember this portion of the manual? It says if you've killed 2 innocents, you've set yourself back more than you've moved forward. Do you still agree with that?
I would have to take a look at the manual, but obviously no one in warfare is seeking to kill innocents.
Okay. Because it's important to show why we're different from the enemy, because we're not the enemy, right? We're different from our adversary. Would you agree with that? We have different morals and different values.
We are not the enemy, sir.
We have different morals and we have different values than the enemy.
We have a code, a uniform code of military justice.
So the answer to that is yes.
Formations that
You're not trying to compare us to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, are you? We're different.
I know the code of the United States military and army that I signed up for.
You can't tell me whether we're
Raise my
different?
right hand.
You're not willing to say we're
Of course
different?
we're different.
Okay, thank you.
It's absurd.
That's why I'm trying to reconcile the fact that we learned many of the same lessons as platoon leaders about unit cohesion, making sure that people were included, that we didn't ask people's political affiliation, that we interacted respectfully with civilian populations, that what a leader says matters, that the tone you set matters, that we are not the enemy, that we are different from them, we lead differently, we have different morals. How can I reconcile that experience and those lessons learned from Lieutenant Hegseth to now Secretary Hegseth, where you say things like what you just saw here, making us equivalent on the same standards as our adversaries, doing the same things that ISIS and Al-Qaeda would do? How can you possibly reconcile that? I can't. And just the other day down at Fort Bragg in our beloved 82nd Airborne Division, sitting there while we politicize the military and pull our paratroopers into politics, booing elected officials, booing politicians with whom you disagree. It's antithetical to our values.
Jason Crow's exchange with Pete Hegseth is one of those moments where military experience meets political reality, and the difference between leading soldiers in a combat zone and grandstanding on television becomes painfully clear. What Crow did in this hearing wasn't just question Hegseth, he held up a mirror to him. He reminded him, and everyone watching, of the standards, values, and ethics the American military stands for, and how far today's right-wing political rhetoric has drifted from them.
Secretary Hegseth, we have a lot of things in common. In fact, our careers started the same way. We were both infantry officers. We were both platoon leaders. We both deployed our platoons to combat in a counterinsurgency environment. There are very few better leadership training grounds than that experience, and it's that experience that I want to transport us back into time, back to Lieutenant Hegseth and Lieutenant Crow. There are a lot of things that make a leader and that make a unit effective. Would you say that unit cohesion is important?
Unit cohesion amongst many is very important, yes, sir.
It's an important element. And part of that is making sure that all members of your unit felt included in that team, correct?
Far more important that every member of that unit felt capable to do the mission and united in that mission.
But that they were included and felt part of the team as well.
I wouldn't use the word inclusion, sir, but yes, they were cohering as a team, yes.
And that you reduce tension and infighting and points of tension between your platoon members, that you can focus on the mission. That was a part of the regular job.
Absolutely. That's why I've said that our diversity is our strength is the single dumbest phrase in military history.
And words
because
are important.
Our unity is our strength. And
words,
so unity amongst members, despite differences of backgrounds, race, whatever that is.
And I agree with you on that.
Together on a mission.
And words, part of that is words are important and setting the tone is important, correct? When you're a leader.
All aspects of leadership, mostly leading by example.
Did you ever tell them your political affiliation?
Guidance.
Did you ever tell your platoon members your political affiliation?
We certainly discussed lots of topics, and I'm sure my political affiliation.
Did you ever ask them theirs?
No, their political affiliation was never a concern to me.
Because it's important that everybody feel included and that people weren't excluded, correct? That would be
my
antithetical
platoon,
to...
I'm sure my platoon contained Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and I had no idea what their affiliation was.
Okay, that was actually my next question, so I appreciate you answering that. You led your unit in a counterinsurgency environment, and you interacted with civilians, correct?
Interacted with members of the civilian population in Iraq, sure.
Yeah. And you were, in fact, a COIN instructor, a counterinsurgency instructor, correct?
In Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012, I was the senior counterinsurgency instructor.
And you signed off on a manual. There's actually a counterinsurgency manual that you signed off on and helped create. And your name's on that manual, correct?
We were a part of creating a lot of content at the COIN Academy, yes.
Crow begins by grounding the conversation in something real, their shared military background. They're both infantry platoon leaders, both deployed, both commanded diverse groups of Americans who had to trust each other with their lives. In that world, there are no Democrats or Republicans in the foxhole, just people who need to work together if they want to survive. And from the way Crow frames it, it's clear he hasn't forgotten that. Hegseth, on the other hand, seems to have left that lesson somewhere overseas. Crow walks him through the basic principles: unity, cohesion, reducing internal tension. Anyone who has ever served knows that none of that works if soldiers feel excluded or judged for their politics, their identity, their background, or anything else irrelevant to the mission. Crow knows it. Hegseth knows it. At least the old Hegseth did. But here, in front of Congress, he suddenly flinches at the word inclusion, as if acknowledging basic humanity has somehow become a partisan position. And that's exactly Crow's point, because this isn't about political correctness. It isn't about buzzwords. It's about the foundational truth that a strong unit requires strong bonds, and you cannot build those bonds if you alienate your own troops. Then Crow goes even deeper. He takes Hegseth back to something both of them were trained on: counterinsurgency, the kind of warfare where winning hearts and minds isn't optional, it's essential. Crow reminds him of a line Hegseth himself signed off on, that killing innocents sets you back more than it pushes you forward, that your behavior, your moral code, your treatment of civilians matters. It's what distinguishes the United States from the enemies we fight. And yet, Hegseth couldn't bring himself, at least not at first, to state plainly that we are morally different from ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Crow had to drag it out of him because today's far-right political environment has trained its leaders to deflect, to pivot, to avoid anything that disrupts the narrative they want to sell, even when it's something as basic and obvious as America is not ISIS. Crow's frustration is palpable, not because Hegseth disagrees with him, but because Hegseth knows better. What Crow is really doing is highlighting the growing and dangerous politicization of the military from the right. He's pointing out how far Trump-aligned rhetoric has pushed people who once understood the difference between military professionalism and political theater. When you encourage troops to boo elected officials, when you frame political disagreement as treason, when you inject partisanship into every corner of public service, you're not promoting strength. You're eroding discipline, trust, and stability. Crow ends with a simple question: how do you reconcile the officer you once were with the political figure you've become? And Hegseth couldn't answer it, because the truth is, you can't. Crow wasn't just asking about Hegseth's inconsistencies. He was asking a question for the entire country. What does it mean when the values we teach young soldiers, unity, humility, integrity, respect, are abandoned by the very people claiming to defend the military? This moment matters because it shows who is actually protecting American institutions and who is using them as props. Crow is doing what responsible leaders do, defending the apolitical nature of the military, defending the moral standards of our armed forces, and defending the idea that patriotism requires more than slogans. It requires accountability. Crow is doing what responsible leaders do, defending the apolitical nature of the military, defending the moral standards of our armed forces, and defending the idea that patriotism requires more than slogans. It requires accountability.